Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, Jacqueline from JP Mint, and Greg the Single Guy, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best kept secret in education. You've got it, international teaching. Welcome to the show.
Hello, welcome to the International Teacher Podcast. I'm Jacqueline from JP Mint Consulting, and I'm here with Kent the Cat Guy. Hi, Kent.
Hi, JP. Thanks for having me.
And all the way on to the other side of the world, I have a brother from another mother, Jason Drahos. Hey, Jason.
Hello, hello.
All the way from Japan. So we've got Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Japan. We've got the three kind of like big portions of the globe represented. And I can see that it's dark where you are, but Kent and I finally have the sun in both of our spaces. Okay, so that was our geography lesson. So Jason and I know each other from TAISM, the American International School of Muscat. Jason was my choir director because at a point in our, I think it was 7 years together, Jason took over the Muscat Singers, which was a community choir for the Muscat expats and locals. And I've got to say, can I say you were my favorite? But it's like, I had so many. There was like 5 or 6 in there in 7 years, but I just learned so much about singing, about my voice, following along with Jason. He was there for a couple of years. Jason, tell us a little bit about how you got into international teaching, and then we'll get into the Muscat years.
Yeah, so I should say I've already paid Jacqueline a lot of money to say that I was your favorite. So that check's in the mail. My transition overseas was a weird one. I hadn't known anybody who worked overseas, hadn't really thought about it. I had taught for 1 year, not even a full year, a partial year in the States. And at the time, I was getting paid less money per year than I paid per year to go to school. So it's not a great situation, right? And in October, November, went through kind of a tough breakup. And I've always been really big on New Year's resolutions. I make a lot of them and I try and stick with them. And so that year, I was writing them and I wrote, apply for 2 jobs out of the Midwest. I just needed a change and just kind of kept writing and thought back to university years when we traveled overseas for the choir tours. And I wrote and won overseas. And so didn't think much of it, put those resolutions away. And then in February, I subscribed to, it was basically a blog for choir directors, things happening around the world and opportunities. And every day you got this digest of emails. And so I was going through it and I accidentally clicked on a link. And that link led me to the homepage of TAISM and the application. And they wanted 2 years of teaching experience. I'm in February of my first year teaching. They wanted previous international experience. I had left the country once on a choir tour. So I thought there's no way I get this. But if I do this now, my CV, all my references and everything are all in line for hiring season in the States in a couple of months. So I just did it, check it off the resolutions list. And I couldn't sleep one night and did all the paperwork and submitted it. It was about midnight, which of course we know is 8 a.m. Oman time. I went to bed and I woke up the next morning before school to an email saying, you might be a good fit. We'd like to do an interview. So I sent the reply back and then went to school and got done with that school day. And it said, great, we'd like to interview you tomorrow. And it was just under 7 days, 6.5 days with like late evening interviews and 3 interviews. And I got an email from Kevin Schaefer who said, you have 24 hours to say yes or no. It wasn't until the third interview. Yeah, it wasn't until the third interview that I even knew where Oman was. Because I thought, they're like,
I know.
I'm this Iowa boy, like I have no idea about the world and there's no way I'm getting this job. So I figured I can do anything for 2 years. And I said, yes, let's go do it. And it was
what
the
year
best
are we
decision.
talking here, Jason?
That was spring of 2010, because 2010-11 were my first year in Oman.
Yeah, we were the same cohort, Kent. So we came in and our cohort was so special and so tight-knit because we spent, I think I've told this on another podcast, we spent something like 7 hours on a bus waiting for our blood results in an air-conditioned bus in the middle of August. And it was so bloody hot outside and none of us could leave the bus because it was too hot. So we would just we got to know each other so well in that bus. I think there was about 14 of us in that cohort, and it was a nice mix of singles without kids, married with kids, and married without kids. So it was that really nice mix.
It was a really good mix.
That's a pretty big school. 14 new teachers just there at that one campus, or are there multiple campuses for TAISM?
Just that one. So it was a really big, I think, cohort for that 1 year.
It was
and
a
it was
big
great.
cohort. It was a small school. At the time, I think it was probably 600. It grew to 800. But it was a lovely mix of everybody from K to 12 teachers as well. So we all got to know each other really well on that bus.
How long did you stay in Oman, Jason?
4 years.
4 years. Okay, so
Yeah,
you
4 years.
got 2 years, okay, and then you extended for a couple extra years.
Yeah, so I really loved it. And looking back now, I think I probably would have stayed longer. In general, the trend in my career has been to find the next best job for me at that time in my life and my career. And so I really, at the time I was doing elementary and middle school, and I really wanted to work with middle school, high school students. And the teacher who was there, Melanie Brink, who was fantastic, they had a whole life set up there. And at the time they were offered a really great job and turned it down to stay in Muscat because it was such an amazing place. And I knew that they just weren't going to move on, right? And so if I wanted to find that next job for myself, I needed to do so. And so I moved away to Singapore.
Okay, so from Oman to Singapore, and what job did you take in Singapore?
I worked at the Australian International School in Singapore, and I was middle school, high school, choral music and classroom music, IB, IGCSE music, that kind of stuff.
Sorry, let me just jump in there. Sorry, JP. When you're a choral teacher and a music teacher at a school, I'm guessing you are running several classes. You're maybe in charge of like a school-wide singing group as well that does special concerts, maybe even travels. What's that job look like?
Yeah, typically in the international school, because we're typically smaller, it's usually split across divisions. So middle school, high school, and some other things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's the kind of traditional choral program we think of, like for me in North America, classroom music classes that are geared toward final performance. So like we're working toward a choral performance, but also general music. I've taught IB music, which is much more composition, music history. Now the new curriculum is digital music. And I've done kind of the whole gamut of music related education.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, the music teachers tend to have an instrument, a specialty. And so in your case, it's voice. Whereas with other music teachers that might be general music teachers in a school, they might have clarinet, they might have trumpet. So it's your specialty is voice, but that still doesn't mean that you can't teach all the instruments, the general music, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think I can't speak for the whole world, but most, particularly North American programs that you go through university, you go through with a major instrument or two. So for me, I went through voice was my major. I was classically trained as a baritone and then knew a little bit of piano, enough to teach, and then all the music theory stuff. So general music tends to be, the Orff music and movement to music. You think of xylophones and those types of instruments. And I can do that. I probably could, if I was pressed to, teach an instrumental class, but I'd be very bad at it.
Jason, you brought a xylophone on the air with us. We would like you to bang out a few songs.
Yes.
So, Jason,
I've got one floating around here somewhere.
You studied musical performance then with an emphasis on voice? Music education
was my degree. So in my school, it was basically a dual major, music education, BA in education, and then also a BA in music, and voice was my primary instrument. So if you think of like the baritone arias and all that stuff, I grew up doing that kind of thing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is that Iowa?
Yep. Yeah. Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. A lot of us overseas.
Yeah. And so, because I was wondering if to get the job in Singapore, did you end up going at the University of Northern Iowa job fair, or did you ever get there?
I have never done a job fair. Well, that's a lie. I did go to the job fair in Bangkok when I was transitioning out of Oman, but I didn't find a job there that I really enjoyed. So I'd actually moved to Singapore without a job and then found one through some connections of friend that I worked with in Oman, her sister worked in Singapore. And so we met up for dinner and drinks. And then she said, I think we're going to have a music opening in January, because they do as an Australian school, January to December. So I moved there in the fall. And
so Jason, you left a job in Oman for not really having a job to go to. But at that point, did you know that the Australian school might have an opening, or did you just make the move?
No, not at all. My partner at the time, she was high school PE and wanted to teach IB kinesiology. So PE, kinesiology, and high school choir and IB music are a very tough combo to recruit for.
Yeah.
And so we had said, if one person got the job that fit them the best, the other would follow. And so she found a fantastic job, and I went, and they just found that. So no, I didn't have a job when I went, though. It was a little bit scary.
That's right. I remember asking you about that at the time. So you started in January. They must have thought they won the lottery. Like, they just happened to get this guy who was already in Singapore. Now, were you hired locally or was it expat package?
No. So they offered me a local contract. However, Simon Hughes, an amazing guy, fantastic head of department, fantastic musician to work with. He was the one that interviewed me. And 15 minutes before they sent the offer to me, I got a text saying, hey, they're going to offer you a local contract. Say no. Like, you deserve the international contract.
Oh,
and so,
wait. Oklahoma. Is he still there? He's
moved on. He's back in Australia.
I was like, he could be really in trouble.
Well, wait a minute. We don't know the end of the story yet.
No, but to be sending a text for the school, against the school, I was like, Oklahoma.
So you say no. What happens?
No, and I responded with, I appreciate the offer. However, I'm currently here on a tourist visa. I'm not a resident. I don't have any of the status that would make me a local hire. And so I would love to work for you, but I would need an international contract. And I got it. So it was really nice. Now, he has moved on. I will say he's moved on. He's back in Australia. I think this is fine. However,
you'll check with him.
I'll check with him, and I'll let you know if he says we should.
Otherwise, we owe a letter of apology to the Australian
I was going to say.
School of Singapore.
And now we're bringing Simon Hughes with. I'd like to join the program with Simon Hughes. Bring him on.
That'd be amazing. What an awesome guy.
Here's the thing. I mean, really, people a lot of times think that it's not negotiable, that you can't advocate for yourself. But absolutely, that's the lesson in this, is that you can advocate. You could say, I'm actually worth the whole package, because you wouldn't have got me if I just happened to not be here. So, you need to get me as a foreign hire.
Well, that's because it was an ad picturing themselves in front of kids trying to teach them to sing.
No. Well, and I understand both sides, right? Like, I get that they're a business and they're looking to make money and save money where they can. At the same time, if they don't hire me as an international hire, they're going to bring somebody else in and have to pay for the flight and have to pay for some other things that they didn't have to pay for me. So I think it was a win-win all around, which was good.
And how long did you end up staying there? You said IGCSE, so it was a little bit out of your wheelhouse. You got to grow professionally.
It was great. So it was a very valuable experience in that I had only ever been in a program where, outside of elementary, the music program's goal was to perform. And I think that's a commendable goal, but you can sacrifice a lot of learning and a lot of risk-taking if you know that everything you do has to go in front of an audience. And so at the Australian school, all of the curricular classes were classroom music or some type of IB, IGCSE, and all the ensembles that I got to work with were outside of the school day. So it was a really valuable learning experience. And I had never done IGCSE. I got to do IB music, which was great. And I was there for 2 years. And then that was middle school, high school, and some classes that I didn't love teaching. It was fine, but I didn't love teaching them. And then I got an option to do just IB music and just choir in Moscow. So after 2 years, I moved to Moscow, Russia.
I'm having flashbacks of your Facebook now, because I remember this trajectory. You went from Singapore, and then the next thing I know, whoa, he's in Moscow. And probably freezing your butt off in the wintertime. So you got the offer, meaning like the interview offer and all of that, but you hadn't applied, or had you applied?
To Moscow?
Muscat.
Yeah. So no, I had left or kept, or maybe paid for, I don't remember. My ISS account was open. And so I got a notification that a job popped up. So I sent in an application.
Now, Jason, tell us a little bit about Moscow. I visited, I think back in 2017, 2018, my wife and I went and visited Moscow. And one thing that stuck out to me was the amount of art, the amount of dance, the amount of music, the halls. It seems to me as if there's a real appreciation for the arts. Did that kind of cultures pervade the school as well with the kids and the teaching? Did you have a feeling of that?
It did. So there's a culture of an appreciation for the arts, an appreciation for music, and a drive to be good at them because they're appreciated. And so I really enjoyed that about it. And I got to work with some really good organizations. I got to sing with the Moscow Oratorio Society. And then I got to conduct a children's choir with them that we brought in kids from different international schools. So no, Moscow was amazing. I tell people that with as many people that live there, whatever it is you love to do, you could do 7 nights a week. So if you wanted to go to a brand new restaurant 7 nights a week, you could. If you wanted to go to a new ballet or a new musical production 7 nights a week, you could. And so we would commonly go out for a very reasonably priced, delicious dinner, and then go to the Bolshoi to see the Bolshoi ballet for $15, right? Like, it was just an amazing experience.
Is that school still open, Jason?
Is not.
It's not. Yep.
It's not. No. A lot of issues around the government side of it, and I think political relations tend to kind of infiltrate everything about these positions. So we left in 2020 to go back to the States for some grad programs, and it was the perfect time. We kind of got away from COVID, and then 1 year after COVID, there were some other kind of political issues. When we were there, we were on diplomatic visas, and that went away. And then they brought in some local government hires to manage the curriculum. And it was just kind of a long, drawn-out process of getting the school closed. So
you're now back. You were back in the States in 2020.
Yeah.
Now, let me clarify. It sounds like you're with someone. You're not doing all this alone. There was the nice lady who did the PE kinesiology. Is she a part of all of these stops?
No. So it did not work out for us in Singapore. And so when I left Singapore, I left alone to Russia.
Yep.
And the first 2 years there, I was alone. And then my third year, my current wife came in as a new hire. She had been teaching originally in New York City and then went to International School of Beijing in China and then came to Moscow. And I think we started dating right away. It was a really, really great fit. And we've been together since. So 2 years in Russia. And then it was time for me to move on, but also with kind of COVID on the horizon and everything else, it was just a good time to go back to the States. So Allison is her name. And I think she's sleeping at the moment. But
and I remember Jason wrote me around that time saying, hey, would you write me a letter of reference? Because I'm trying to apply. I'm trying to apply for
interviewing me. Yeah.
Yeah, she did that on her own without my recommendation.
She vetted him, trust me.
Yeah. But for my reference letter for grad school, because he was applying to various grad schools to get into, or maybe one to get into a program. Can you tell us a little bit about that repatriation going? Was it full-time school for you and no job?
Yes and yes. So it was full-time school. So full-time grad school, 2 years for an MM. And then at the same time was conducting a couple of local community choirs and conducting a church choir. So full-time school and very fully part-time teaching.
Is this back in Iowa?
No, it was in Flagstaff, Arizona, which I'd never been to. It was gorgeous. Really, really pretty place.
One of the hottest places in the United States this last summer, I understand.
Yeah. And wildly enough, though, they get the snow in the winter, right? So you're up in the mountains.
Yep.
And so you get the really hot summer and you get the snowy winters. It was gorgeous. No, it was a really good experience. However, I think a lot of times us international people, we have this shared experience of, I remember maybe the second year going home for summer and sharing stories with friends and families, and you can see the moment that the eyes glaze over and like they don't have a reference for the experiences, and it's nobody's fault. But, when you're with family, then I think there are other things, you're still family. So when I'm with my family, then we do family things, and it's not as much of an important thing that I connect with somebody on that level, because then in 3 months I go back overseas and, I'm back in that life. It was a very weird experience to be in the States for 2 years and be surrounded by people that maybe they had come to Flagstaff for school, but that was maybe the furthest from home they'd been. And so it's, a few hours away from where they grew up, and just having a lot of people that I interacted with having there was no interest necessarily in me sharing what I had done. And sometimes I feel like there's no good way. The Midwesterner in me feels like it comes off as, being boastful or something else about
braggadocious.
Braggadocious.
We talk about this a lot in international education, that people in general don't really want to hear our stories back in the States.
Yeah. And and if you haven't traveled or if you haven't lived elsewhere, you don't have the reference for it necessarily, right? So it's just kind of this ethereal thing that I think in the best of worlds, they want to connect with me there in that present, which is great.
Yep.
But it was a very weird experience of having 2 years of going, I don't know a lot of this. Like the pop culture is different. I'm back in a university setting, right? And so like a lot of pop culture and a lot of media things that just were different than my life in Russia and my life in Singapore.
And were the people your cohort and the masters, were they of your age, or did you find there was like a big range? Or
I'm so old.
Yeah.
I'm so old to go back
I was going to guess.
grad school. No, Sarah Irvin, who she was finishing up her second year when I was going in the first year, was amazing. A great cohort member to have, but was still, I think, 10 years younger than me. And so like we connected and had a great time. And, being in that realm, you have so many other things that you can connect about. But it was very weird to be, I went back to grad school in my, 35, 36. And so very, very old to do it, I think. And then to work with the underclassmen or the undergraduates who are 18 and 19 was wild.
What is the emphasis of an degree? What do you spend most of your time doing?
It's a balance between music history and theory and conducting practice. So it is looking at the realm. For me, it's an M with a focus in choral conducting. So it is, how do I use my body and my gesture to bring out the best sounds in a choir? And then what are all of the historical reasons why that works, and historical things behind the music and theoretical things behind the music? How do I better interpret the music to bring out the most authentic performance?
Sounds like a nice way to spend your 2 years.
It was great. I'm so glad I did it. So it'd been on my bucket list for a while. So
what made you transition out of Flagstaff? You talked about that kind of urge to maybe pick up sticks and move on. Was that what happened for you in Flagstaff, that you were ready for another adventure?
So Flagstaff is quite small, and there are phenomenal musicians that live there that have roots there, right? So I think for us, it was never going to be a place that we would move back to. We're going to be moving back into kind of quite low on the pecking order, especially in a university town with just a master's. It'd be difficult to get a foothold. So we always kind of knew it'd be 2 years there for the master's and then to move on. We went to Flagstaff particularly for the mentors that I had, and then decided to move on. And my wife knew that she wanted to go back overseas. So we left from there to Abu Dhabi.
So the intention had always been to go home, get your master's, and go back overseas. That wasn't a calling to maybe repatriate and then it didn't work out. It was always that intention.
Yeah, I think so, especially for Allie, my wife. She loved the overseas, and she was an amazing supportive partner during that time. But she was very much back in the States for me to be able to pursue this master's and kind of pursue that goal. For me, there's probably a world where I would go on and do a doctorate degree or find something else, but not necessarily to repatriate. And so, we knew that we would head back overseas afterward.
What was she doing at the time? Sorry.
She was, because she can never be bored, she took on teaching a brand new subject, teaching math at a private school in Flagstaff. She's a biology major, science teacher. She took on the role of teaching math and then also an online master's degree as well. So it was amazing.
Wow.
It was absolutely amazing.
Great use of your time. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, no kidding. And so then how did you guys get the Abu Dhabi school? Did you go to a job fair then? Because you mentioned that it wasn't the case.
No, it was back onto International Search Associates. Paid to open our accounts there again and had a look. And there were a handful of places and jobs that seemed like they would fit. And that was one of them. And so we applied, and I think by Thanksgiving in that second year of grad school, we knew that we were heading out, which made for a little bit of an interesting spring, right? To be in this place of transition amongst people who don't necessarily understand that transition.
Yeah. You're telling them
Right?
you're moving to Abu Dhabi, and they're like,
yeah,
are you a Flintstone all of a sudden? A yabba dabba
Yeah,
doo? Like what?
is that? The number of times I heard the yabba dabba doo joke was insane.
Tell us a little bit about Abu Dhabi. You had experience in the Middle East with Oman. I'm guessing that Allison, this was her first posting in the Middle East. How was Abu Dhabi?
It was a really interesting place. I think one of the things I loved about Oman, and loved again when I went to go visit recently, was the fact that you got to interact with Omanis on a day-to-day basis. I remember going there to conduct a festival and getting off the bus, and my bus driver was an Omani, and that was amazing. And going out to cafes and restaurants and sitting on these communal benches with a guy that lives down the road. Like it was a really amazing experience. In the UAE, the last time I looked, something like 80% of the population is expats, right? And so it's a very different feel. And yet Abu Dhabi, they're working toward it, but it's not quite as built up as Dubai. So I think Oman, you have this brilliant kind of local feel and local culture and a lot of nature. And in Dubai, you have the very built up, sparkly city. And Abu Dhabi is somewhere in the middle, which was not what we had expected. And in the end, wasn't exactly what we were looking for in a place to live. I think it works for the people that live there and have especially small children. It's a great place to be. There are a lot of things for young kids, and the lifestyle for families is really accessible. So it was okay, but it wasn't what we were looking for as far as things to do and get out and see stuff.
So how long did you end up staying in Abu Dhabi?
Just 2 years.
2 years.
So we signed up for a 2-year contract and pretty quickly decided to move on.
And that would probably,
Jason and I ran into each other. So it was,
That's right.
I think it was, I feel like it was pre-COVID or just when COVID was hitting.
Oh, was that in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah.
You know what that was? That was, I had been called in to do a conducting festival. So I had been called over to do their kind of local choral festival. And you were there as well. And so we got to connect in the cafeteria.
Yes, but you weren't teaching there at the time then.
No, I was still in Russia at the time. Some colleagues had reached out who knew me and said, would you be interested in doing this? And so I'd flown over for that.
Yeah, because it was just at the absolute beginning of this. And I had flown to the Middle East for my holidays, my Chinese New Year from China. And then I ran into Jason and, was able to say, like, worlds colliding. He's coming in from Russia. I'm coming in from China, and we meet in Abu Dhabi. Like, what a small world this is. And Jason, by the way, Jason used to be my upstairs neighbor. So I got to wake up to the beautiful sounds of his baritone voice in the shower, in the kitchen, in the living room. It was constant music. It was like singing. It was the soundtrack of those 4 years. I loved it.
Yeah. I'm so glad. Because it would be very awful if it was really awful.
And whistling. I remember also the whistling.
Usually the walls are made of stone here in the Middle East. I'm surprised you can hear.
Oh, well, I think maybe they were there too. I think maybe I just sang too loudly.
Just sang loud.
All the windows open, the door open, just in through the vents.
All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all 4 of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITPexpats. That's with an S. ITPexpats is our handle.
All right. And thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners. And though we're not monetized, we are here for you. And we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show.
And so from Abu Dhabi, what was in the books? What did you do to look for a job?
So weirdly enough, we kind of knew right away that it wasn't going to be a great fit. And so we had started looking a year out or so. And there's the job I'm at now, St. Mary's. They've got a long history of quite an excellent choral program. And the job had been open previously. And then my understanding is they had looked and it didn't quite work out. So it had gotten postponed a year. And so when I saw it initially, I thought that'd be amazing. I knew of the program. I knew of the school. But of course, I was under contract. So it was a non-starter. And then in the fall of my second year, it came open again. And so I thought that's fascinating. And I talked to Ali and said, would we consider going to Japan? It would have been the first time that we had recruited together, but without us both looking for a job in one place necessarily. Because at the time, they had shown a choir posting, but no science or math posting. So we knew there was a risk of maybe getting accepted and then it having not work out. So we applied at a few different places and I was offered the job here. And after considering it, we decided to give it a go. It was too good of an opportunity to pass up.
Is this your first year there at St. Mary's?
It is, yeah. So I was looking at the calendar yesterday. I think this is the end of week 7 that I've been in Japan, and end of week 3 or 4 that we've been in our apartment. So it's still very new.
And did Allison end up getting an offer from any of the schools?
She's subbing at the moment. So it's actually been really nice. A good friend of ours got married over the summer and she got to stay back home and do that. And then came here for a couple of weeks and then went to go see, I was getting up every morning going to school and she got to go to Europe for a 2-week vacation in France and Switzerland to see another friend get married and have a bunch of cheese and wine. So, and she's subbing in the meantime, which is a great source of income and flexibility.
Well, what city
Japan
are you
is
in?
doing the January start. Would there be any option for her to get on there?
It's a good question. I think probably a lot of the schools that would do the January start, maybe she would look at other schools. But I know she put in an application for a school that just posted a math job today.
Great.
And so they're starting to open up now, even already for next year.
Are you in Tokyo?
We are, yeah. Just southwest a hair of like downtown Tokyo.
Well, it looks like you guys are 7 weeks. Looks like you're fitting in. I don't know if you're listening to the audio feed, you might not see the Sapporo beer in the background, and it sounds like you just got off the Shinkansen recently. So it sounds like you guys are really just jumping right on in. Tell us about Japan.
It's been a wild experience. Living in Oman especially, and then in Singapore, I got to see quite a bit of Thailand and other parts, Indonesia, Malaysia, those areas. But I'd never been to Japan or, South Korea or any of those things. And so it's been different. The subway is amazing. I loved the metro system in Moscow. It was quick, regular, the biggest elevators or escalators you've ever seen in your whole life.
A little loud because they still have those old metal wheels on metal tracks. But other than that, beautiful.
Well, so fast. It's great. And so I had missed that, right? Because I've not owned a car other than Oman since I've been overseas. And so it's nice to have that again. The food is delicious. Usually, I think tonight I love fried chicken, and karage, the Japanese style fried chicken, is one of my favorite foods. And so tonight we had gone into town and Ali said, "Oh, I found this place. They do a chicken flight." And I was like, "I'm sorry?" And she goes like a flight of drinks. Flight of chicken. And I was like, "That sounds amazing."
Yeah.
And so I got there and I look at the menu and it was 11 kinds of chicken, except one was chicken feet and one was chicken neck and one was chicken liver and one was chicken heart. And I was like, I've got to try it, right? I should not have tried it. Like I'm glad I did. It was a great experience, but gosh, I did not feel amazing leaving.
Very
the ramen's
adventurous
been
in
great.
food there. I know.
Yeah, very
I
adventurous.
really like it. But the people are amazing, and a lot of arts. I appreciate a place. My sense, and again, all of this is with 7 weeks of understanding. So, but I appreciate seeing in my students and seeing in my coworkers this drive to do everything to the best of one's ability, because it's important to do everything to the best of one's ability, and that aligns, I think, very much with our own outlook on life and our own outlook on our careers. And so it's been a really nice transition in that way. Hectic, of course, like moving countries is always tough. And, I've had some friends ask, oh, have you done this thing? Or have you done that thing? Have you done the go-kart, the Mario Karts downtown? And I'm like, no, because I'm still figuring out, where do I go to get groceries? Or like if this grocery store is closed today because of the holiday, where's the next one? And so, of course, it's a lot of that.
How, are you going to take some Japanese lessons?
Yeah. So today was day 317, I think, of Duolingo.
Yes. Jason and I are in a quest together on Duolingo.
We are.
Yeah.
What JP meant? What are you studying on Duolingo?
Well, I study all my languages so I don't forget them.
This episode of the ITP podcast is brought to you by Duolingo.
Duolingo, absolutely. The little owl, the little Duolingo owl. No, I do Spanish at night because my head isn't done in. So I just do Spanish because that's easier. But in the morning, I try and do Korean, Chinese, Turkish, and German so that I don't lose any of my languages because of lack of use. And but sometimes those mornings are tough because, you're just waking up and then you're having to think in these languages and read. But I would imagine in Japanese Duolingo, are you doing there's different alphabets?
Yeah, 3. Kanji, hiragana, and katakana. And I always get confused on hiragana and katakana. I think hiragana is for sounds that are from traditionally Japanese words, and katakana is from sounds that are typically foreign words, I believe. Yeah, it's so tough. And some days, speaking of the brain deadness, some days it just clicks and it's great, and some days not so much. And, I can't recognize my own name. There's a really nice pub nearby owned by actually a parent of our sister school. And it's a really nice place to go in. And the locals there speak just enough English for us to talk. And we speak just enough Japanese for us to talk. And so it's a good practice session for everybody. They offer local free Japanese lessons here. So I've not taken it up on the first semester just because it's such a crazy time with transition. But I know Allie has started, and it's, I think, a class of 15 or 20 that they offer through the community center for free.
I love that.
Local teachers come in and just teach it to foreigners, which is fantastic.
Is the job hard? Long hours? What's it like working in Japan? They have this sort of reputation of long hours and putting everything you got into it. What's that like?
Yeah, so I will say, much to their credit, my school is really kind of enforcing this idea of work-life balance. And so I remember, being a new teacher, I'm going to work longer hours. It's a little bit like jumping on a treadmill that's at full speed. It's quite a big program, and they do a lot of local, competitions or programs or events, and it's a lot of catching up. This thing's due next week. So I didn't know it existed, so now I'll figure it out. But I remember the first week of school going in to see an administrator on a Wednesday or Thursday. We get out done. School gets out at 3:30. Contract hours are until 4. I think I went in at 4:15 or 4:20, and everybody was gone, which is amazing that they kind of draw that line. So
that's great.
The school has that culture. I think working long hours just because, as we all know, the transition, we want to be at our best, and a lot of times that's playing a lot of catch up work in the first few months.
And making a good impression.
I'm going to go off script here for a moment. Are you an anime guy, Jason? Because I have 2 musical animes that anime. The plural of anime is anime. Hibike, Sound Euphonium.
So I'm not a big anime person, but mostly because of a lack of exposure in my life. So please tell me again. I want to write it down.
It's Hibike in Japanese, and Sound Euphonium is the translation. And it's the story of a Japanese instrumental band and their conductor. 3 seasons worth, and of course, them being in high school, they have all sorts of drama around it. But it's excellent because some of the best musicians participated in helping with the instrumental music. One of my favorites. The other one is K-On, the K-On Butsu, which is the after-school music, light music club. 4 and then 5 girls take up instruments, and they just play at their local school. So 2 of my favorite musical anime.
Okay, so can I
ask a clarifying question?
What is this? What is this? Are we talking, is this a Netflix series? What is anime?
Crunchyroll. In the United States, we'll watch this on Crunchyroll. Jason, I don't know. You probably just see it on regular TV. What was your question, Jason? Your follow-up?
Yeah.
I want to know too, like, tell us more about what it is. But my question was, like, when you say musical anime, is it anime that has music, or is it anime that is a musical?
No,
like we think
not
of
a musical style anime. No, it's very much in the old dialogue drama style, but it is all the students
around
do music.
Musical ideas. Yeah.
And it's nice, and you'll probably see pop-up anime things advertising these shows, because even though they're, K-On's 10, 11 years old now, but it's still well-loved. And Hibike did a 3rd season this last year, and so it's still going to be fresh in people's mind.
So, but again, for our listeners who have no idea what this is this like a TV show but animated, like a cartoon, like Simpsons? Or
think about when you were a kid.
Guy.
We watched Japanese anime when we were kids. Speed Racer, Battlestar Galactica, all of these. He-Man. I don't think it's Japanese, but it's very much in the style of anime. So,
like, okay, I watched
Sailor Moon,
Gem.
Pokemon.
I watched Gem.
Sailor Moon.
That. Okay. All right. I got it now. So, and then adults watch this. This isn't just for kids.
It's huge. Adults love manga and anime, right?
Yeah. It's everywhere.
Yeah. I teach the manga anime club at my school, so I apologize.
Cool. Well, if you decide to come visit, have you been to Japan before?
I have not. Here's the thing. My last name is Arimura. I have 2 Japanese grandparents. My father was born in California after his parents moved from Japan to the West Coast of the United States. My grandparents spoke no English. They spoke Japanese their whole lives, even when they lived in America. My father was the 10th of 10. He never learned Japanese. He spoke English. His parents and him did not have a common language together.
No.
Yeah, but I have not been, and my father never went either. So my task is to get there one of these years.
Yeah. Well, look me up when you come over.
I certainly will.
I'll take you out for a chicken spread. It's fantastic.
Chicken flight.
I might get just a half version. The half was chicken thigh, and the
good half, the top half, not the bottom
half. The top half, right? That's
exactly right. Hey, Jason, we have a question for you. In all these travels, and packing up bags and things, do you have 3 things you need to have that makes home?
Well, that's a good question. I think, so I've collected musical instruments from my travels, and the older I've gotten and the, kind of more disposable income I've had, the more real those instruments have become. And so I like to have those just to fiddle around with or remind me of the places I've been or inspire me musically. So I think that's probably one. And honestly, I think I would count all those instruments as my 3. Like, I remember my first move overseas, I left with 3 suitcases and then lived in Oman for 4 years. And upon leaving, because I wasn't getting I didn't have a job. I was paying for the shipping out of my own pockets. I think left with 2 or maybe 3 suitcases again and purged. So I love to purge. For me, I think wherever I am, and I guess now I have a wife, right? So if she's there, she wouldn't be a belonging. But that's my home. Right? Like,
we always say without counting family.
Yeah. So, like, I think, other than the instruments, no. I've very much come to carve out home wherever I live, and not necessarily have to take the stuff with me.
Ken?
Well, I already told you that we don't have enough time for Jason's police stories. But Jason, after traveling the world like you do, is there a run-in with the authorities, the custom officials, the local police, the sheriff, a Flagstaff?
Safe to share.
That's, what do we say, suitable for air? Do you have a run-in with the authorities you could tell the ITV crowd about, Jason?
Yeah, so I think one is safe to share. I remember it was my 3rd year in Moscow, and I had made some friends with some of the other people that had come in that year. and we gone out for drinks. Not too far away, just kind of down around a few blocks. But these blocks, right, in Moscow are big and even bigger after maybe a few pints. And so we were coming back, and I was convinced I knew a shortcut. I knew a shortcut back to our complex.
It's no short.
And so we took it, because it was cold, right? It's December, it's freezing. And if I remember right, maybe my friend was a little bit worried that he'd be in trouble with his wife at the time for coming back late. So we're trying to get back quick, and we take this shortcut. And it was a shortcut, except it ran into the giant fence that surrounded this complex we lived in. And I thought, well, it's just like we live on the other side. It's fine. Like, look, we're just going to jump the fence. Well, that's what we did. And so we jumped the fence. I think he was much more nimble. So he gets up and then helps me up. And we're both sitting on top, and he jumps down and I jump down and turn around to the set of security guards that guard this. What I realized, like saying in past tense now, is an embassy kind of owned complex that we're living in. And I lived there for my third year living there, and I knew Sasha, the main guard, and I had enough Russian to just say because he's supposed to turn us in, right? Like, even though he knows we live there.
You did storm the embassy, Jason.
We've jumped this fence, not the embassy, like the housing compound. But, and so I'm like, please, just, you know me, it's fine. That we're going to go home. Just don't tell anybody, it's okay. And he looked at us for a hot minute, thinking about calling us in, and then just said, good night, and sent us off. Funny enough, it was quite a while before that friend was allowed to come out with me again.
That was his wife's rule.
His wife's rule was, maybe.
It's like, we do not want to have to break you out of a gulag in Siberia.
No.
It takes less than that to end up there these days.
Oh my gosh.
So
my apologies to Russia, by the way, from the ITP. We love Russia, so please don't...
Don't cancel us. So, Jason, if people want to reach out to you, do you have like a LinkedIn or a website, or I don't know, is there Instagram where they can, or do you want them to reach out to you via the International Teacher Podcast?
I think through ITP would be great. And I know you guys have my email, so you can make that available.
Yeah.
If they have questions about teaching overseas or being in music or any of that, I've gotten rid of a lot of the social media stuff. And the websites I have are for geared much toward the student-facing population.
Yeah, so they can reach out to us at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. I think that's what it is.
Good. Way to plug that address there.
Yeah.
I think so. I was going to say, I think it's the long one, right? It's not the itp@gmail.com, because that was probably taken 20 years ago.
Let's do final thoughts. Let's start with you, JP, and then we'll go to you, Jason. JP, final thoughts tonight.
Well, I'm very excited that Jason has finally accepted my offer to come onto the show. I've only been harassing him for a year, but it was fantastic. I'm really glad you came, and it was great to reconnect and see you. Jason, Kent first, I don't know who.
Who's up? What?
To you, Jason, final thoughts.
Yeah, I've appreciated this a lot. I think it's so great to connect with people in this realm, in this area of what we do, about what we do. And if it inspires people to keep doing it, or better yet, inspire somebody to take the leap and click on that random link from an email they get about a job opening, then they might as well. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
I would like to thank my co-host, JP Mint. You can find her at jpmintconsulting.com. Thank you so much, JP Mint. I would also like to thank our very special guest, Jason Drahos, from Tokyo, where he teaches music. Jason, thank you so much for joining the ITP tonight.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I'm Ket Ket Guy, and always you can find me in room 303. We'll see you next time. Okay.